President Trump meets with the president of Turkey and takes questions from reporters. Topics included the Gaza Strip Israel conflict, the Ukraine war, as well as possible government shutdown by the end of September. He also made some comments regarding the recent ICE shooting in Dallas. Take a look.
Is going to be taken today about the issue, about the things that are going on in the Gaza, Palestine. Are we going to...
It could be today, yeah, it could be today. We have a very strong dialogue going on with Saudi Arabia, with, I would say, you have 4 or 5 real leaders that are being good. As you know, I met with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE. We met with Jordan. The King of Jordan was there. We had a really great meeting. I think a lot was determined at that meeting, and I have to meet with Israel, and I have to do that also. They know what I want, and I think we can get that one done. I hope we can get it done. A lot of people are dying, but we want the hostages back. We don't want them back, 1 this week, 1 in 2 months from now, 3 later, and like the way it's been going. We got them all back. We got a lot of them back. We got the American Alexander. We got the American hostages back. But we have now 20 plus 38 bodies, dead bodies, and we want them all back. And we want them back at one time.
will help to release the hostages?
Do I think what?
Do you think President Erdogan will help to release the hostages?
I don't know if he'll help in that. I don't really think we have. I don't think it'll be necessary in this case. I think we're going to be in a pretty good position. There are a lot of people that want that done. I met with great leaders. Look, you saw the people that were there, and great leaders. Egypt was also represented. We met with the leaders of that part of the world, and they want to see if they can get something done. And I'm going to have to tell Israel, let's go. We want to get the hostages back. Everybody wants to see that war over with, by the way. Everybody. So we're going to see what happens.
Mr. President, how do you see a joint initiative with President Erdogan to bring the President of Russia, Putin, and President Zelensky to the negotiating table?
Well, I can tell you that President Erdogan is very respected by both of them. Everybody respects Erdogan. They really respect Erdogan. I do. And I think he could have a big influence if he wants to. Right now, he's very neutral. He likes being neutral. So do I like being neutral. But he's somebody that if he got involved, the best thing he could do is not buy oil and gas from Russia. If he did that, that would be probably the best thing. He knows Putin like I know Putin. I thought Putin, I settled, as you know, 7 wars, and it's probably more than that if you really want to know the real facts, but 7 wars, and I thought this would be among the easier ones to settle. But I'm very disappointed in Putin. And he's been fighting hard, he's been fighting long, and they lost millions, they lost like 1 million soldiers. And with all of the heavy bombardment over the last 2 weeks, they've gained almost no land. Think of that. They've gained almost no land. And I'm not going to ever call anybody a paper tiger, but Russia spent millions and millions of dollars in bombs, missiles, ammunition, and lives, their lives. And they've gained virtually no land. I think it's time to stop. I really do.
A few months ago, you met with Aliyev and Pashinyan. Can you follow up?
So where?
You met with Aliyev and Pashinyan, Azerbaijan President Aliyev and Pashinyan. Can you follow up on what you want to say about current process?
No, I can't. I like this guy. I like him. He's from CNN. Fake news, the worst fake news, but I like him. So it's CNN Turkey. I'll get Brian. Go.
Syria has been a major issue between the two countries
That's
for
right.
the past decade. And you said the future to Syria is in Erdogan's hands back in, I think, December and January. And the countries are in the process of integrating regional fractures into the main government. When do you want to see that happen?
Well, I think President Erdogan is the one responsible for Syria, for the successful fight in ridding Syria of its past leader. And I think this man is responsible. He doesn't take the responsibility, but it's actually a great achievement. They've been trying to do it for 2,000 years. I said, he does it. He did it. I mean, they're your surrogates. I think you should take the credit for it. I told him, take the credit. For 2,000 years, you've been trying to take over Syria. He took over Syria, and he doesn't want to take the credit. You know, all of those people are his surrogates. But the leader of Syria, the new leader, as you know, I took sanctions off in order to let them breathe, because the sanctions were very strong. But I think we should have a major announcement today. He was responsible for that victory. It was a victory for Turkey, because they've been fighting, as you know, for like 1,000 years. And it never went, you know, it was back and forth, but he's responsible for that. So he would have a lot to say with respect to Syria. But at his request, I took, and the request also of the King of Saudi Arabia, it's very interesting, and Qatar, they said if you could take the sanctions. We had very strong sanctions. They couldn't have lived with those sanctions, and I took them off to give them a chance to breathe. But the president was one of the people that was responsible for that. He asked me to do it. I did it.
Mr. President, furloughs are very typical when the government shuts down. Why is the administration directing federal layoffs of federal workers this time around?
Well, this is all caused by the Democrats. They asked us to do something that's totally unreasonable. They never change. They want to give money away to illegally, people that entered our country illegally. They want to give them massive federal money. And we don't want to do that because it means everyone's going to just keep pouring back. Right now we have absolutely perfect borders like you haven't seen in many years. Even better than I had great borders during my 4 years, but these borders are stone cold closed. You can only come into our country legally now. But the Democrats want to give it all away. They want to open up the borders. Take a look at that. Big thing. They want to open borders again. After what we're going through now, getting rid of prisoners, getting rid of all of these people dropped out from mental institutions, drug dealers, drug addicts, everything. They're putting everybody into our country. It's all ended now. But this is what Schumer wants. This is what the Democrats want. They want to have, and they want to take our money. We're doing well because of tariffs. We're doing unbelievable. We're making more money than we ever have made. And by the way, we're going to take some of that tariff money that we made, just to get off the subject for a second. We're going to take some of that tariff money that we made. We're going to give it to our farmers, who are, for a little while, going to be hurt until it kicks in. The tariffs kick into their benefit. So we're going to make sure that our farmers are in great shape because we're taking in a lot of money. We're finding. The other day, it was very interesting. They found $31 billion. They said, sir, we found 31. I said, you mean positively, right? They said, yeah, 31 million more than we knew. And they said, we don't know where it came from. I said, check the tariff shelf. They came back the following morning. They said, you're right, sir, it came from the tariffs. We've never seen anything like this. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking some money from all of the tariff money that we've taken, and we're going to distribute it to our farmers until the tariffs kick into their benefit, which ultimately the farmers are going to be making a fortune. But it's a process of, it has to kick in. All right, maybe one more.
There was another shooting at an ICE facility in Texas yesterday.
Terrible.
Detainees were killed. The FBI director posted on social media bullets that were engraved with the message anti-ICE.
Right.
He just posted another thing on social media saying they recovered a handwritten note from the subject that read, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof? Who do you hold responsible for the uptick in left-wing violence in the country?
Radical left rhetoric. The radical left is causing the problem. They're out of control. They're saying things, and they're really dumb people. I mean, I look at Crockett. I look at some of these people. They're very low IQ people, actually. But the radical left is causing this problem. Not the right, the radical left. And it's going to get worse, and ultimately it's going to go back on them. I mean, bad things happen when they play these games. And I'll give you a little clue. The right is a lot tougher than the left. But the right's not doing this. They're not doing it. And they better not get them energized, because it won't be good for the left. And I don't want to see that happen either. I'm the president of all the people. But the radical left is causing this. Radical left Democrats are causing this problem. And it gets worse. It gets worse. And it'll be a point where other people won't take it anymore, and that will not be good for the radical left. And we don't want that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, it seems like an indictment of James Comey is imminent. Would this be the first step in accountability for pushing the hoax of Russia, along with Barack Obama involved as well?
Well, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. You have very professional people headed up by the Attorney General and Todd Blanche and Lindsay Halligan, who's a very smart, good lawyer, very good lawyer. They're going to make a determination. I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person. He's a sick person. I think he's a sick guy, actually. He did terrible things at the FBI. And but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen. Thank you very much, everybody.
And you were listening to President Trump there at the White House, the Oval Office, and seated next to him is President Erdogan of Turkey. Both leaders meeting today to talk about a multitude of issues. But I want to focus on what we heard from President Trump because he touched on Syria and lifting the sanctions against that nation. He also talked about the ongoing war in Gaza. And he mentioned the shooting yesterday at the ICE facility in Dallas, Texas, basically blaming the radical left. Those were his words, the radical left, for that shooting. But now I want to get to the White House and CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman. Willie, your takeaways from what the president had to say during that Oval Office meeting today.
Hey there, Mugo. Well, no shortage of topics there that the president discussed, and you mentioned it perfectly. He did talk about the situation in Gaza. He essentially said that he believes that they're close to a deal, but remember, essentially things have stalled there in terms of those negotiations with Hamas as Israel continues to ramp up its efforts to get rid of that group. We, of course, know that the president focused heavily on the war in Ukraine with these remarks with the President Erdogan there sitting next to him. He said that Putin ought to stop, and he then went on to say that they believe he's very disappointed in President Putin as Russia continues to assault Ukraine. Remember, the president met with the Russian president in Alaska to try to bring about a solution to this conflict. And the leader of Russia and the leader of Ukraine have not sat down just yet. This is something that the White House has wanted that bilateral meeting and then a trilateral meeting, perhaps with all three leaders, including President Trump, if there were a solution to be brought to the war in Ukraine. And we saw earlier this week, the president is siding with Ukraine, essentially shifting his policy stance, saying that Ukraine could potentially win back much of the territory that it has lost with continued support with the Europeans. We, of course, know that the U.S., under the leadership of President Trump, has sought to sell weapons to NATO nations, to European nations, who then, of course, give some of those weapons that Ukraine needs to them in their battle and pushback against Russian forces. And the president also was asked about the threat of a potential government shutdown, blaming Democrats, saying that they want illegal immigration. I'll note that the White House is signaling that they will potentially move to lay off perhaps thousands of government employees in response to a government shutdown, which could happen in the coming days. Government funding runs out on September 30th. We, of course, know there are some essential government functions that the U.S. government will continue to run. Air traffic controllers is one of the jobs that I think about when it comes to those essential employees, immigration services, things such as that. But the president saying there that he believes that this plan that the Democrats put forward to claw back some of the cuts for Medicaid and the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, he calls it the radical left, essentially, those proposals coming from Democrats there. So a lot of news coming out of that, those remarks with the president as he continues to sit down with President Erdogan of Turkey.
Yeah, and Willie, I also wanted to get your take on what the president had to say about the shooting yesterday at the Dallas ICE facility. He was very, very clear that he thinks the radical left, those were his words, are responsible for shootings, the shootings we've seen as of late. And then he also mentioned how they shouldn't do that because the right might respond and the radical left wouldn't like it. And that's interesting as we talk about the need to dial back on that kind of rhetoric and how we need leaders who are saying, hey, we should just not do this at all, whether it's coming from the left or the right. I want to get your take on that. Is it just how important is it to have a leader who is standing up and saying this is wrong, whether it's coming from the left or the right or the middle, whoever?
Yeah, that's certainly right. But we, of course, know how President Trump tends to respond to these types of situations. The president essentially being himself there. We know that he has blasted what he calls the so-called radical left for not only getting in the way of his political agenda, but also with some of the violence that we have seen play out across the nation as well. So it's perhaps no surprise that the president said what he said there in the Oval Office in response to a question about the shooting that took place yesterday. Oftentimes we see more tempered responses coming from governors and local leaders. I'll note the response coming from the governor of Utah following the Charlie Kirk shooting was a very tempered response, calling for calm. We have seen that come from political leaders in Congress as well, on both sides of the aisle. But oftentimes the president, in his words, will cast blame on some individuals, or in this case, a ideology, so-called blaming the radical left for some of these incidents that we've seen play out.
All right, Willie James Inman at the White House for us, walking us through a multitude of topics there after that meeting with President Trump and the president of Turkey, Erdogan. Thank you so much. As always, we appreciate your time.